In today's video, I'm going to show you how we're going to build the matching end table to this farmhouse style coffee table. So we're going to show you some tips on how to make it rustic, but how not to make it primitive. So here we go. So we have some 2x4s cut to 24 inches, so we're going to glue these together to make legs. So we want our legs to end up being about 3 inches square. So let's get to working on that.
So take the 2x4s and put a slab of glue on there. Just spread it around a bit and stack them one after another, alternating a pair of legs so we don't glue each of them together accidentally. And proceed along until we get all 4 pairs matched up and glued up. And then you clamp them all together in one big pile.
So I saw these 2x4s 1 inch thick and cut the edges off so they're square. So now I'm just going to glue these up to make the bottom shelf.
Underneath the legs I have parchment paper. I'll leave a link down below for parchment paper. It's great for glue ups. Nothing sticks to it.
Here's our legs. So basically we have glued up 2 2x4s. We've not cut the ridges off this because we're going to basically cut this to 3 inches. So we're going to basically have a cut on this side and this side after we glue them together. So there's your leg. And so the side of the coffee table will have the solid piece. This edge over here has the joint, which is smooth, and that's where you basically can hide that nice and easy. Put a little paint, just so we have a hint of the seam. That's all you need to show. So the first thing people see in an end table or a coffee table is going to be the top. So we start with this lumber, and you can see all this has round over edges. Well, the key is cut off those round over edges so you can make a smooth top. Matter of fact, we're going to basically cut off all the round edges on all the lumber we're going to use. So if you look at these 2 pieces that are going to be the top for our coffee table, you see it has this little ridge in here. Well, when we trim these edges up, it'll basically be flat, and that way we'd be able to have a nice smooth top.
Now I'm cutting the 2x4 legs to 3 inches square by cutting off the roundovers.
So here's the legs after having trimmed to 3 inches wide. And so you can see they're nice and smooth. So when they be painted, they probably won't even be able to tell. Probably except for this one. So we didn't quite have enough glue in here. So I'll put a little glue in here and do that one. Since it's going to be painted, it'll probably be covered pretty well. So there we go. So these are all the pieces for the top. Have the edges cut off. And the top is kind of rough right off the recycle pile. So these are all recycled or upcycled lumber. So now I'm going to put them through my planer. Now I know most of you don't have a planer, so you'll just have to sand them. After you get them all glued up, you'll sand it or use a hand plane to get it smooth. But since I have one, I'm going to use it here to create nice smooth surface on both sides. Now we all have all our legs dried and cut and trimmed and ready. Now we need to cut them all to the same length, so everything will be the same height. So we're just going to put these on the table saw, and we'll use a stop and cut them all to the same length. Okay, so we have all of our pieces here, and we have some sharp edges, so we're going to round those over, and we're going to do all the pieces the same. There's 3 ways you can do that. You can take sandpaper and come in here and just sand over the edge, and that'll work just fine. You can take a hand plane, this is a block plane, and you come in here and you chamfer over the edges like that. Or you can take a router and have a round over bit to round over the edges. So while the router is probably the fastest way to do it to create the more uniformity, we're trying to build a rustic farmhouse style table, and these legs are probably going to be sanded after you put on the chalk paint to give it a little wear look. So my preferred method on this is going to be using the hand plane. So let's do that now. cut for a dry fit. And so I did this as a way to understand if everything is going to fit together real good. And what I realized, because I cut my legs 3 inches square, my little support pieces are going to be my rails or stiles, whatever you want to call them, are a touch over 3 inches. Right here in the corner, when this point flush, it's a little bit long on here on this side, and the one on that kind of is going to clash with that. So rather than have to worry about that there, and up at the top, I'm going to take these guys and we're going to recut these. So instead of being 3 1/8, they're exactly 3 inches. Okay, this is the part where you take your lumber that you think is ugly and not, or unsightly, or maybe have dings in it, and let me show you how to hide it. So see this piece here? This piece is going to have a top on it. So you could take this piece and put it up here, and no one's going to see it because they may see this underside. So all the pieces you're trying to hide, you put up here and have the top cover them, and they're not seen at all. So I got this coffee table turned up on end so we can look underneath it to see how the joinery works. So basically we have pocket hole screws here and here going into the leg. Our legs are flush there and they're recessed on that side. So I did the recess on that side because I turned these on edge, but on the end table we're going to build, they're going to be the same as this. Since we don't, all sides are the same width, it'd be kind of funny if you had one different. So they'll all look like this. Now remember, when you drill these from the top, you drill from the top into this unit, because we're going to use the ugly looking rails face up on the top, so they'll be hidden by the top when you put that on. So I have all my boards marked where I'm going to drill the pocket holes. More importantly, not the location, but the side that I'm drilling these on, because these ugly ones are going to be positioned to where they'll be covered by the top. So now let's get to work and drill these guys. Now I have this one leg that I just screwed up top, and the second one on bottom is clamped down there. So now we're going to put our second leg, attach it with our screws for our pocket holes. So I have a clamp behind here. Here we go.
Now just continue with the pocket hole joinery to join the two sides together to complete the top portion of the table.
Now we're going to put in the bottom rail around all 4 sides. So I've used a 3-inch, which is my 2x4, as my spacer here. Make sure this board is 3 inches consistent distance all the way around. Put a little backer brace on it. So now we're going to drill this in. All right, so now we get our box frame built, so now we want to work on the X. The reason I have this 3 inches is because I'm going to put my X with 2 1.5 wide pieces. And that way I'll put 1.5 cut at a 45 to here, so the 45 will end on the bottom and on the top. I just have to make 2 of those, one to fit here and one to fit behind it. That way I don't have to double miter the corners, and I don't have to worry about a half lap or cutting sharp pieces to meet in the middle. It accomplishes the same look. It's a lot simpler to do. So now let's get our pieces cut to 1.5 inch. Now to cut the angles on your X braces, every angle is going to be different. It'd normally be 45 if in fact this was a square, but it's a rectangle because it's taller than it is wide. So you can clamp it in here and you come in the backside and mark it at what your angle is. And then you can take this off and you have your marks where you're going to have to cut your angles for your miters. So now I'm putting in the X's. So what I'm doing is gluing the end, and then I will brad nail behind toenail on one side so it's not seen very well, be mostly hidden. So on my top here, I need to square this off because these are uneven. So I have a 4-inch space between the edge of my saw and the cutting blade. So I marked that off and put my straight edge, my straight edge guide down here. So now we're just going to cut this. So the next step at our farmhouse end table is basically to put a coat of chalk paint on this. But if you take a look at this, I haven't sanded it. I've left the nail holes. I'm looking for that rustic look because once you paint it, you'll do a light sanding and you want some of those distress or nail holes or gouges to kind of stand out. That's what gives it a little more of the farmhouse rustic look. So now I'm going to mix up my chalk paint. So I get, this is just regular latex ceiling paint that we have for the house. And it don't need much, so you have 2/3 of this and 1/3 of the paste. So you mix up some plaster of Paris. You can get this at any of the box stores or a craft store. Just takes a little bit of this to make a paste to mix in here. This big box of it, 4 pounds worth, for the cost of half the cost of what you have for about 1 quart of chalk paint. This will last you for a long time. We're going to do a little light sanding. I have 80 grit on here. We're going to go over all the surfaces to buff down. Remember, we did a paint on top of a rough unsanded wood, so we want a little bit of the roughness to come out. We're going to go over the edges to get them a little bit shown through. So here we go. So now I'm going to take just a damp cloth to wipe off all the dust from this, and then I'm going to do a wipe on poly on the coat, and that way it'll get a nice thin layer of poly, and then we'll be done.
Now to get the top finish, I elect to use my hand plane, but you could use a sander as well. And after it's nice and smooth, I moved on to finishing. So I used an early American stain here, and after stain I used a polyurethane finish on top of that.
So now I'm prepared to attach the top to the top of this farm style table. So I'm going to take my figure 8 fasteners, my Forstner bit that's 3/4 of an inch, drill 4 holes on here to inset these down enough so these things are beveled, so that side will go down. The screw sets into here like this, and it goes down on that, and then the underside will be screwed into this. That way you have a nice hold on the top. There you go. One sweep, farm style, end table to match the coffee table. So if you liked our video, and you possibly learned something, give us a thumbs up. And as usual, come back and see us real soon.